First-class cabin. Flight 447 to Chicago. An elderly black man in a modest navy suit sits quietly in seat 2, reading a worn book. A wealthy white businessman storms aboard, spots him, and his face twists with disgust. He snaps his fingers at the flight attendant. There must be some mistake. That man doesn't belong in first class. The cabin falls silent. Nobody knows this quiet passenger carries America's highest military honor in his worn leather bag. Nobody knows this confrontation will change everyone aboard forever. Before we dive into this incredible true story, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. If you believe everyone deserves respect regardless of how they look, smash that like button right now. And subscribe because stories like this need to be heard. You won't believe what happens when this veteran finally reveals who he really is. Now let's get into what happened on that flight. Saturday morning sunlight streamed through the windows of American Airlines Flight 447 as passengers settled into their seats at San Francisco International Airport. The first-class cabin hummed with the quiet efficiency of seasoned travelers stowing designer luggage and adjusting noise-canceling headphones. Marcus Wellington sat in seat 2A, his gray hair neatly trimmed, his navy suit simple but pressed with military precision. At 68 years old, he carried himself with a dignity that came from decades of discipline. In his lap rested a collection of James Baldwin essays, the pages worn soft from repeated readings. Head boarded early, as he always did, avoiding the rush and the stares that sometimes came with it. The gate agent's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing final boarding. Marcus glanced at his watch, a plain stainless steel Timex head worn for 30 years. His connecting flight to visit his daughter in Chicago would get him there by early afternoon. He allowed himself a small smile, thinking of his granddaughter's excitement when Head called yesterday. The peace shattered when Richard Caldwell burst through the first-class curtain, phone pressed to his ear, voice booming. "I don't care what Thompson says. Tell him if he doesn't close by Monday, the deal's dead. Dead. He'll find another buyer who actually wants to make money." Richard was 52, his tailored charcoal suit probably worth more than most people earned in a month. A Rolex Presidential glinted on his wrist as he gestured emphatically, nearly hitting a flight attendant with his oversized carry-on. His face radiated the particular confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Jessica Ramirez, a flight attendant with 7 years of experience and a professional smile that hid her exhaustion, approached him gently. "Sir, if you could lower your voice and find your seat, we'll be departing soon." Richard barely glanced at her, still talking into his phone. "Yeah. Hold on." He looked up at the seat numbers, then froze. His eyes landed on Marcus, sitting quietly in 2A. Richard's expression shifted from irritation to visible disgust. He lowered his phone. "Excuse me, miss." His tone had changed, sharpened. "There must be some mistake." Jessica followed his gaze to Marcus, and her stomach tightened. She'd seen this before. "Sir, how can I help you?" Richard pointed at Marcus as if indicating a spill that needed cleaning. "That man is in first class. There's obviously been some kind of error with the seating." Marcus didn't look up from his book, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Jessica kept her smile fixed, though her voice cooled slightly. "Sir, all our passengers have valid tickets. If there's an issue with your assigned seat, I'd be happy to check." "My seat is fine." Richard's voice rose. "What I'm saying is that he doesn't belong here. In first class." Other passengers began to notice. An elderly white couple, the Hendersons, glanced over from seats 3A and 3B. A young white tech entrepreneur named Brett looked up from his phone in seat 4C. A businesswoman named Patricia paused while organizing her laptop in seat 1D. Jessica's professional training warred with her growing discomfort. "Sir, I assure you all ticketing has been properly confirmed." Every passenger in this cabin has a valid first-class ticket. Richard's face reddened. Do you know how much I paid for this seat? $6,000. 6,000. I shouldn't have to sit next to someone like him. The words hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. Marcus' hands tightened slightly on his book. Had lived 68 years. Had heard these words, these tones, these implications, more times than he could count. But they still landed like small cuts, each one finding a place that hadn't quite healed from the last. Sir, Jessica said, her voice strained, I need to ask you to lower your voice. If you're uncomfortable, I can see if there's another available seat. Why should I move? Richard's voice climbed higher. Has the one who doesn't belong here. He probably used food stamps to buy that ticket. This is a disgrace to the airline. Brett pulled out his phone, angling it toward the confrontation. This was the kind of content that went viral. Patricia, the businesswoman, frowned deeply, but said nothing. The Hendersons exchanged uncomfortable glances, then looked away. The cabin filled with the heavy silence of people who knew something was wrong but didn't want to get involved. Jessica tried again, desperation creeping into her professional tone. Mr. Caldwell, please. I can offer you a seat in row 5 if you'd prefer. Absolutely not. Why should I be the one inconvenienced? Hez clearly in the wrong section. Marcus finally closed his book, the soft sound cutting through the tension. He looked up, meeting Richard's eyes with a steady gaze that held no anger, only a deep, weary patience. I have as much right to this seat as you do, sir. His voice was quiet but firm, carrying the weight of someone who'd spoken these words before, and knew he'd have to speak them again. Richard's face went from red to purple. Don't you, sir, me. Don't you dare. I actually earned my place here. I work. I contribute to society. I built a company from nothing. What have you ever done except take handouts? The ugliness of it spread through the cabin like poison. Jessica's hands trembled as she reached for the phone to call her supervisor. This was beyond her training, beyond the scripts they'd given her for difficult passengers. Marcus looked at Richard for a long moment, and something in his expression made a few passengers shift uncomfortably. It wasn't anger. It was something sadder. Recognition, perhaps. The look of someone who'd seen this particular hatred so many times, it had become almost familiar. Ill move, Marcus said quietly. I don't want to cause trouble. No. Jessica surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. Sir, you're staying exactly where you are. You have every right to this seat. She turned to Richard, her professional mask cracking. Mr. Caldwell, I'm calling the gate supervisor. Please wait here. Richard laughed, a harsh, entitled sound. Call whoever you want. I know the CEO of this airline personally. One phone call, and every one of you will be looking for new jobs. You're treating a paying customer like a criminal, while defending someone who probably got his ticket through some government handout program. Marcus said nothing. He simply opened his book again, though his eyes didn't move across the page. In his peripheral vision, he could see the other passengers. Some looked away. Some watched with morbid curiosity. None spoke up. Had been here before. Different plane, different seats, different decade. But always the same question underlying it all. Do you belong here? Prove you belong here. Justify your presence in a space someone has decided isn't meant for you. His hand moved unconsciously to his chest, touching the place over his heart where, beneath his shirt and jacket, 7 scars marked where bullets had torn through his body 54 years ago. The Medal of Honor sat in his bag, 3 feet away. But he didn't reach for it. He never did, unless absolutely necessary. Dignity, his father had taught him, shouldn't require credentials. Amanda Torres, the gate supervisor, boarded the aircraft 5 minutes later, her expression professional but concerned. At 41, Shed dealt with countless passenger disputes, but Jessica's voice on the phone had carried an edge of real distress. "Good morning, everyone," Amanda said, her tone deliberately calm. "I understand we have a seating concern. May I see both tickets, please?" Richard thrust his boarding pass at her. "Finally, someone with authority. I want an explanation for why that man is in first class, and I want him moved immediately." Amanda examined Richard's ticket, then turned to Marcus. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" Marcus handed it to her without a word, his face impassive. Amanda studied both documents carefully, though she already knew what she'd find. Both were legitimate first-class tickets, properly issued and paid for. She handed them back to their respective owners. "Both tickets are valid and in order," she announced. "Mr. Wellington, your seat is 2A. Mr. Caldwell, yours is 2C. Everything is correct." "That's impossible," Richard sputtered. "How did he afford first class?" "I want to know how he paid for that ticket." Amanda's voice cooled. "Sir, that's none of your business, and frankly, it's none of mine either. Both passengers have valid tickets. That's all that matters." "This is discrimination," Richard said. "Reverse discrimination. I'm being punished for being successful, for being a productive member of society, Mr. Caldwell." Amanda said firmly, "If you continue to disrupt this flight, you will be removed from the aircraft. Do you understand?" Richard pulled out his phone. "I'm calling corporate right now. I'm calling my lawyer. You people have no idea who you're dealing with. I have connections. I contribute to this airline's bottom line. I fly first class 40 weeks a year." Captain Helen Morrison's voice crackled over the intercom, cutting through the confrontation. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We have a ground delay due to a passenger issue that needs to be resolved before departure. We appreciate your patience." Groans rippled through the cabin. Passengers checked their watches, their phones, their connection times. The tension ratcheted higher. An elderly man's voice came from row 3. Henderson, the husband, muttered just loud enough to be heard. "Can't someone just move so we can get going? I have a connection to catch." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Not because they were cruel, but because they were casual. The assumption that he should be the one to accommodate, to shrink, to disappear, that his dignity mattered less than someone else's schedule. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. For just a second, he was back in Georgia, 1973, had been wearing his dress uniform, the Medal of Honor ribbon on his chest. The restaurant hostess had looked at him with the same expression Richard wore now. "We don't serve your kind here." The medal hadn't mattered then. His service hadn't mattered. He opened his eyes, back in the present. His hands rested steady on his book, but inside, a familiar weight pressed down. How many times would he have to prove his humanity? Richard saw Amanda reaching for her radio and laughed bitterly. "You're actually going to defend him? Let me guess. Basketball player? Rapper? Or maybe you're someone's driver, someone's help, and they bought you a ticket as a gift." The guesses landed like accusations, each one carrying the same implicit message. "You couldn't have earned this. Someone like you doesn't belong here on your own merit." Brett, the tech entrepreneur, had his phone out now, recording openly. The video was already uploading to his social media. "This is insane," he muttered, mostly to himself. Patricia, the businesswoman in 1D, finally spoke up. Her voice was quiet but clear. "Mr. Caldwell, this is completely inappropriate. You need to stop." Richard whirled on her. "Excuse me? Stay out of this, lady. This is about standards. This is about maintaining the quality of service we pay for. If anyone can just buy a first-class ticket, what's the point? Anyone did just buy a first-class ticket, Patricia said, her voice stronger now. That gentleman. He purchased a ticket, same as you. How do you know that? How do you know it wasn't some welfare program? Some charity case? Amanda stepped between them. Mr. Caldwell. Final warning. Lower your voice and take your seat, or you will be removed from this aircraft. Fine. Richard spat. I'll sit. But, filing a formal complaint against all of you. And going to make sure everyone knows how this airline treats its actual valued customers. He threw himself into seat 2C with excessive force, glaring at Marcus. Marcus remained still, his book open, his eyes on the page, but he wasn't reading. He was breathing, in and out, steady, the way Head learned in the jungle when fear threatened to overwhelm. When the only thing between him and death was the ability to stay calm, to think clearly. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Marcus had been 7 years old, shaking with rage after being called a slur at school. His father, a Tuskegee airman who'd flown combat missions over Europe only to come home to segregation, had knelt down and gripped his shoulders. Son, some people will spend their whole lives trying to make you feel small. Don't help them. Don't let their sickness become yours. Stand tall. Not because you have to prove anything, but because you know who you are. Marcus had tried to live by those words for 61 years since that conversation. But God, it was exhausting. Amanda spoke quietly to Marcus. Sir, I'm so sorry about this. You don't deserve this treatment. It's all right, Marcus said, though they both knew it wasn't. Captain Morrison's voice came over the intercom again. Ground crew, we're ready for pushback once the passenger situation is resolved. The entire cabin waited, suspended in uncomfortable tension, while Amanda radioed back to the gate. Richard couldn't let it rest. Even seated, even with Amanda still standing in the aisle, his sense of grievance demanded expression. He turned in his seat, facing Marcus directly. Fine, he said, loud enough for the cabin to hear. You want to stay in first class? Prove you paid for this ticket yourself. Show everyone here that you didn't get some special program, some handout. Prove it. Marcus looked up from his book, meeting Richard's eyes. I don't need to prove anything to you. See. Richard addressed the cabin like a prosecutor making his case. He can't, because he didn't pay for it himself. Probably some liberal guilt program. Probably taxpayer money. My money. Jessica, still standing near the galley, felt her hands shaking. She'd been trained to de-escalate, to stay professional, to never take sides. But this was beyond training. This was wrong, and everyone knew it, and still the majority sat silent. Sir, she said, her voice quavering. Mr. Caldwell, I need you to lower your voice immediately, or we will have to ask you to deplane. Richard laughed. You're going to remove me? The paying customer? For asking questions? For having standards? A woman's voice rose from economy class. Lakeisha Johnson, 28 years old, had been listening from row 12, her 6-year-old daughter Mia beside her. She stood up, her voice clear and strong. You're not asking questions. You're being racist. The word hung in the air like a bell that couldn't be unrung. Richard's face went scarlet. There it is. I knew it. I knew someone would play the race card. That's what you people do. Can't defend your position, so you cry. Racism. Mia, Lakeisha's daughter, looked up at her mother with wide, confused eyes. Then she looked at Marcus, at Richard, trying to understand the tension crackling through the cabin. Her small voice cut through the adult fury with devastating innocence. Mommy, why is that man being mean to the old man? The question silenced everyone. Children had a way of reducing complex situations to their essential truth. A man was being mean. That was all Mia could see. She couldn't understand the layers of prejudice, the historical weight, the systemic patterns. She just saw unkindness and wondered why the adults allowed it. Several passengers looked away, shame coloring their faces. Brett's phone was still recording. His video had 20,000 views already, climbing fast. Comments flooded in. "This is disgusting. Someone stop this. That poor man." But the passengers on the plane, the ones who could actually stop it, mostly stayed quiet. Richard saw the phone pointed at him. "Delete that. Delete that right now. You have no right to film me." "Actually," Brett said calmly, "I do. Public space, buddy. First Amendment." Richard lunged across the aisle, reaching for Brett's phone. "I said delete it." Marcus moved with surprising speed for a 68-year-old man. He stood, positioning himself between Richard and Brett, his body language calm but immovable. "Gentlemen," he said quietly, "please." For the first time, passengers really looked at Marcus standing. His posture was ramrod straight, despite his age. Shoulders back, feet planted, with the unconscious precision of someone who'd stood at attention 10,000 times. There was something in the way he carried himself, a controlled strength that spoke of discipline earned through fire. Richard, momentum carrying him forward, shoved Marcus' shoulder. "Get out of my way, old man." Marcus didn't budge, didn't retaliate, didn't even show anger. He simply stood there, absorbing the push, his eyes meeting Richard's with that same steady, sad patience. The cockpit door opened. Captain Helen Morrison stepped out, her uniform crisp, her expression thunderous. At 45, she'd flown for American for 20 years, and before that, she'd been Air Force. Her right hand bore an Air Force Academy ring. "Class of '02, Mr. Caldwell." Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "You just committed assault on a commercial aircraft. That's a federal crime. TSA has been notified." Richard's bluster faltered. "Assault? I barely touched him." "As fine. Look at him." Morrison's eyes moved to Marcus, really studying him for the first time. She saw the military bearing, the controlled strength, the way he stood. Something in his posture triggered recognition, the way one service member could often spot another. "Sir," she addressed Marcus directly. "Are you all right? I apologize for this treatment." Marcus nodded once. "I'm fine, Captain. If dealt with worse." The way he said, "Captain," the respect, the automatic military courtesy, the weight in those 4 words. Morrison's eyes narrowed, her training kicking in. She'd seen that bearing before. Combat veterans carried themselves differently. They had a stillness to them, a presence earned through surviving chaos. "Sir," she said carefully, "may I ask your background?" Marcus hesitated. "Army, ma'am. Long time ago." "What did you do in the Army?" "Infantry." "Vietnam." The cabin had gone completely silent. Even Richard seemed to sense head wandered into territory he didn't understand. Morrison's expression shifted. Respect, recognition, and something deeper. "Thank you for your service, sir. Just did my job, Captain." But Morrison kept studying him. Something about this man, about his quiet dignity under attack, about the way he'd positioned himself to protect another passenger without aggression. This wasn't just a veteran. This was someone who'd led, someone who'd faced fire. She made a decision. "Everyone please remain seated. I need to make a call." Captain Morrison returned to the cockpit, but left the door open. Passengers could see her on the radio, her expression serious. Through the opening, First Officer Derek Chen glanced back at the cabin, his face troubled. Meanwhile, Brett's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. His video had exploded across social media. 200,000 views. 300,000. The numbers climbed like a rocket. Notifications flooded his screen. News outlets were picking it up. CNN had just tweeted the link. BBC World News. Al Jazeera. The hashtag someone had created, hashtag Flight 447, was trending nationwide. In the cabin, the atmosphere had shifted. Richard sat rigid in his seat, phone to his ear, talking urgently with someone, probably his lawyer. The other passengers watched the drama unfold with mixed expressions: shame, curiosity, discomfort. A few had pulled out their own phones, reading about the incident they were currently living through. Lakeisha made her way forward from economy, Mia's small hand in hers. She stopped beside Marcus' seat. "Sir," she said softly, "I'm so sorry you're experiencing this. Nobody should be treated this way." Marcus looked up at her, and his stern expression softened. "Thank you, young lady. Don't worry about me. I'm all right." Mia stared at Marcus with open curiosity. Children didn't carry the same filters as adults. She saw an old man with kind eyes, and she saw that people were being mean to him. And in her world, that was simple and wrong. "Are you somebody important?" she asked. Marcus chuckled, a warm sound that seemed to ease some of the tension. "No, sweetheart. Just an old man trying to get home." But Lakeisha noticed Marcus' hands resting on the armrests. Scars, old burns, the kind that came from fire, and smaller marks, round and puckered. She'd seen similar scars before. Her husband Jerome had them. Shrapnel wounds from Iraq, 2009. "Sir," Lakeisha said carefully, "were you in the service?" Marcus hesitated. This was always the moment. The question that led to other questions, to recognition he didn't seek, to gratitude he felt he didn't deserve. "Long time ago," he finally said. "Vietnam." Lakeisha's eyes widened. "My husband served. Army. Iraq. Hez in the bathroom right now, but Head want to thank you. Tell him thank you for his service," Marcus said. "That generation, they had a hard fight." For a moment, Marcus' vision blurred, not with tears, but with memory. The jungle, the heat, the sound of helicopters and gunfire and men screaming. He was 24 again, leading his platoon through dense undergrowth. Thompson was on point, Miller behind him. Good men, men who trusted him. The explosion, the world turning to fire and noise. Thompson down, Miller down. 3 more. The enemy position ahead. Machine gun cutting through the trees. His men pinned, dying. The choice that wasn't a choice. Someone had to move. Tenet. Someone had to act. Head run forward. Bullets tearing through the air. Pain exploding in his shoulder. His leg. His chest. Kept moving. Had to keep moving. Had to get to that position. Had to save his men. The memory hit like a physical blow. Marcus' hand trembled slightly before he caught it, forced it still. Back in the present, Richard was still on his phone, his voice rising again. "I don't care what the optics are. I want everyone on this plane sued. This is a violation of my rights. My civil rights." The irony was apparently lost on him. Patricia, the businesswoman, had her laptop open now. She'd searched the airline app, looking up Marcus' seat assignment. Something caught her eye. The ticket notation, purchased through VA travel program, Veterans Affairs. She sat back, understanding dawning. Her voice, when she spoke, was quiet but clear. "Hez a veteran." The words rippled through the cabin. Heads turned. The energy shifted subtly. Richard overheard. "So what? Lots of people were in the military. That doesn't make him special. That doesn't mean he belongs in first class." Jerome Johnson emerged from the bathroom, heading back to his family. He was 31, powerfully built, with an Army Ranger's tattoo visible on his forearm. He stopped when he saw Lakeisha talking to Marcus. "Sir," Jerome said, approaching with the easy camaraderie of service members. "What branch?" "Army." Marcus said. "You?" "Same." "Rangers." "Iraq." "2 tours." Marcus nodded with real respect. "Hard fight. Thank you for your service." "Which unit were you with, sir?" Marcus hesitated again. "Different time. Different war." Jerome recognized the evasion. Some veterans didn't like to talk about it. He respected that. But something in this man's bearing, the scars, the way he held himself, spoke of serious combat. Captain Morrison returned from the cockpit, pulling Jessica aside. Her voice was low, but in the quiet cabin, several people caught fragments. "Corporate wants us to remove Caldwell, but it's my call. I want to handle this differently." Morrison approached Marcus, and her body language had changed. There was a formality to it now, a deference. "Sir, I'm Captain Morrison, Air Force Academy, class of '02. May I ask what you did in the Army?" Marcus met her eyes. "Infantry captain. A long time ago." Morrison studied his face, the scars on his hands, the bearing. "Where did you serve, sir?" "Vietnam. 69 to 72. Were you decorated, sir?" The question hung in the air. Marcus didn't want to answer, didn't want the attention. But there was something in Morrison's eyes, a fellow service member asking an honest question that made evasion feel disrespectful. "Yes, ma'am." "May I ask what decoration, sir?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, simply, "The Medal of Honor." "Do you think respect should be conditional? Should Marcus have needed to reveal his Medal of Honor to be treated with dignity?" Comment number 1: if you believe every person deserves basic human respect, regardless of their credentials or accomplishments, hit that like button if this story is making you think differently about the assumptions we make about people. And subscribe because we need to share these stories. We need to remember that dignity is a right, not a privilege. But here's the real question. What happens next when everyone realizes who Marcus really is? Does Richard change? Do the silent passengers feel the shame they should? And what does Marcus himself think about having to prove his worth? Stay with us. The next part will shake you. Captain Morrison's expression froze. For 3 full seconds, she didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. Then she turned sharply and walked straight back to the cockpit. First Officer Derek Chen looked up as she entered. "Captain, what's going on?" Morrison's voice was tight. "Derek, search Marcus Wellington, Army, Vietnam." Chen's fingers moved across the tablet. The airline database, Google, military records. His eyes widened as results populated the screen. "Captain, you need to see this." Morrison leaned over, reading. Her hand went to her mouth. Medal of Honor recipient, Captain Marcus Wellington. Citation dated 1971, Vietnam. Chen read aloud from the official citation, his voice dropping to a reverent whisper. "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, Captain Marcus Wellington's platoon came under intense enemy fire from a fortified position on April 14, 1971. Despite being wounded twice in the initial ambush, Captain Wellington exposed himself to withering machine gun fire to pull 6 wounded soldiers to safety. When his platoon's ammunition ran critically low and the enemy began to overrun their position, Captain Wellington single-handedly assaulted the enemy bunker, eliminating the threat and capturing vital enemy intelligence. He sustained 7 gunshot wounds and severe burns from enemy grenades, but refused medical evacuation until all 23 members of his platoon were secured. His extraordinary heroism and selfless devotion to duty saved 23 American lives and are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service. Morrison's hands were shaking, tears streamed down her face. 7 bullet wounds, burns, And that man out there just shoved him. Chen stared at the citation. What do we do? Morrison wiped her eyes, straightening her uniform. We honor him, the way he deserves. But first, he needs to know that we know. She walked back into the cabin, her bearing transformed. Every passenger could see something had changed. Her face held an expression of profound respect, mixed with barely contained emotion. She stopped at Marcus' seat. Captain Wellington, may I have a word with you? Marcus looked up, surprise crossing his features at the use of his rank. Morrison knelt in the aisle, bringing herself to eye level. Several passengers leaned forward, trying to understand what was happening. Sir, Morrison said, her voice thick. I hope this isn't presumptuous, but I looked up your name. Marcus' expression shifted. Discomfort. Modesty. A flash of something almost like resignation. Captain, he said quietly. That was a long time ago. With respect, sir, some things never get old. What you did in Vietnam, what you are, the sacrifice you made for this country. Her voice broke slightly. I'm honored to have you on my aircraft. Truly honored. Richard had been watching this exchange with growing confusion and irritation. What is this? Some kind of military club? Can we please just fly? Morrison didn't even glance at him. Her attention remained fixed on Marcus. Sir, do you still have it? Your medal. Marcus looked deeply uncomfortable. Public recognition was the last thing he wanted, but he could see, in Morrison's eyes, that this mattered to her, that it was important. Slowly, reluctantly, he reached into his worn leather carry-on bag beneath the seat. His fingers found the wooden box head carried for 54 years. Simple oak, the finish worn smooth from handling. He lifted it out, placed it in his lap. The cabin had gone completely silent. Even Richard had stopped talking, sensing something significant was happening. Marcus opened the box with careful reverence. Inside, resting on faded blue velvet, lay the Medal of Honor. The pale blue ribbon with 13 white stars. The gold star with the profile of Minerva surrounded by the words, United States of America. The simple word beneath it, valor. Morrison gasped. She stood immediately, came to rigid attention, and saluted. First Officer Chen had followed her out of the cockpit. When he saw the medal, he snapped to attention beside her, his hand rising in salute. Jerome saw it from the back of first class. His entire body went rigid. Tears sprang to his eyes as his hand shot up in perfect military salute. Lakeisha, beside him, covered her mouth with both hands, crying. Other passengers who had military experience or recognized the distinctive medal stood. An older man in row 7 came to his feet, saluting. A young woman in row 5 stood, hand over her heart. Patricia, the businesswoman, rose slowly, her hand pressed over her heart, tears streaming down her face. Brett's camera captured it all. The simple wooden box, the medal gleaming in the cabin light, the flight crew and passengers standing in respect. The old man sitting quietly, looking almost apologetic for the attention. The video was going to be seen by millions. But in that moment, in that pressurized tube at 30,000 feet waiting on a runway, only this mattered. Recognition, respect, honor given where honor was desperately, profoundly due. Even the Hendersons stood, husband and wife both, faces stricken with shame and respect warring on their features. Richard remained seated, his face cycling through confusion, discomfort, and growing realization that something had shifted fundamentally and he was on the wrong side of it. Captain Morrison held her salute for a long moment before lowering her hand. Her voice, when she spoke, carried through the entire cabin with the authority of command. Ladies and gentlemen, this man is Captain Marcus Wellington, Medal of Honor recipient. She paused, letting the words sink in. The Medal of Honor is America's highest military decoration, awarded for valor in action against an enemy force. It represents the absolute pinnacle of military courage and sacrifice. Since its creation during the Civil War, only 3,507 have ever been awarded in our nation's entire history. Only 71 living recipients exist today. The silence in the cabin was absolute. Even the ambient hum of the aircraft seemed to quiet. Morrison continued, her voice shaking with emotion. In 1971, Captain Wellington saved 23 lives while sustaining 7 gunshot wounds and third-degree burns over 40% of his body. He single-handedly assaulted a fortified enemy position to protect his men. He refused medical evacuation until every single soldier under his command was safe. Jessica, the flight attendant, stood with tears streaming down her face, her hand pressed to her mouth. Patricia stood from her seat, her voice clear despite the tears. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I should have spoken up immediately. I should have stopped this. Please forgive me." Henderson rose, removing his baseball cap, his weathered hands trembling. "Sir, I have no excuse. I'm ashamed of myself. Deeply ashamed." His wife Martha stood beside him, weeping openly. "Please forgive us. We were wrong. So wrong." One by one, passengers began to stand. The wealthy lawyer in row 4. The young couple in row 6. The businessman in row 8. Each face showed the same mix of shame and belated respect. Jerome stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Sir, my grandfather died in Vietnam. Khe Sanh, 1968. You might have served in the same country he gave his life in. Thank you. Thank you for bringing men home. Thank you for your sacrifice." Marcus, still seated, looked profoundly uncomfortable with the attention. "I just did my duty. Plenty of others did more. Plenty didn't make it home." "Sir," Morrison said gently, 7 bullet wounds. You nearly died." "But I didn't," Marcus said quietly. 58,220 Americans died in Vietnam. I'm just lucky." Mia, Lakasha's daughter, tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, is he a superhero?" Marcus heard the question. Despite everything, despite the tension and pain, he smiled at the little girl. "No, sweetheart. Just a soldier who had good men to fight for." Brett, still filming, his voice thick with emotion, said, "Sir, this video has 3 million views already. People need to know your story. They need to know what you did." Marcus shook his head slowly. "It's not about me. It never was. It's about the men who didn't come home. Thompson, Miller, Rodriguez, 19-year-old kids who died in that jungle. They're the heroes." During this entire exchange, Richard had been silent, his face cycling through shades of red and white. He gripped the armrests of his seat, his knuckles bone white. Finally, he spoke, his voice strangled. "So he's a war hero. Fine. That's admirable. But that doesn't change the fact that he trailed off. Even he couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't give voice to what everyone knew Head meant, what everyone had heard in his earlier words." Morrison turned to him, and her voice could have frozen fire. "Doesn't change what, Mr. Caldwell? That he's black? That's what you were going to say, wasn't it? That's what this has been about from the beginning." Richard's lawyer was shouting something from the phone, but Richard had dropped it on his lap. That's not. You're twisting my words. This man," Morrison said, her voice hard as steel, "took 7 bullets for this country. He has more right to sit anywhere he wants in America than anyone I can think of. Certainly more than someone who thinks skin color determines a person's worth." Jerome stepped forward, tears still streaming down his face. "I've served with men of every color. Black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American. And I learned one thing. Blood all looks the same when you're trying to stop it from pouring out of your brother's body. Color doesn't mean a damn thing when someone's taking fire for you." Patricia's voice cut through, sharp and angry. "Mr. Caldwell, You said you earned your first-class seat. What have you ever done that compares to this? Closed a business deal? Made money? This man literally offered his life. 7 bullets. Burns over 40% of his body. And he lived with it for 54 years. Henderson, the elderly passenger, spoke up, his voice heavy with shame. I'm a veteran myself. Korea, 1952. I should have known better. I should have stood up immediately. I have no excuse for my silence. Richard, desperate now, grasped for anything. Everyone makes mistakes. I didn't know. How was I supposed to know? Marcus finally spoke, his voice quiet but carrying a weight that silenced everyone. Would it have mattered? If I wasn't a Medal of Honor recipient? If I was just a veteran who served? Or just a man who worked hard and saved up for a first-class ticket? Or just a man, period? Would I have deserved respect then? The question hung in the air like smoke. Marcus continued, I didn't show you this medal to prove my worth. My worth as a human being shouldn't require proof. None of us should have to justify our existence, our dignity, our right to occupy space in the world. The Medal of Honor didn't make me worthy of respect. I was worthy before I enlisted, before I went to war, before I did anything except be born. Just like every person on this plane, just like every person in this country. The silence that followed was profound. Several passengers looked away, unable to meet Marcus' eyes. The shame in the cabin was palpable, thick enough to choke on. The cabin door opened. 2 TSA agents stepped aboard. Agent Williams, a black man, in his mid-40s, with military bearing, and Agent Rodriguez, a Latina woman in her late 30s, with sharp, observant eyes. We're here for Richard Caldwell regarding an assault complaint on a federal aircraft, Williams announced. Richard stood quickly, nearly stumbling. This is ridiculous. I'm the victim here. I've been humiliated, ganged up on. This is a setup. Agent Williams' eyes swept the cabin, taking in the scene. He saw Morrison's Air Force Academy ring. He saw Jerome's Ranger tattoo. He saw the wooden box still open in Marcus' lap, the Medal of Honor gleaming inside. Williams' entire body snapped to attention. His hand rose in salute. Sir, he said to Marcus, his voice rough with emotion. Navy, 2001 to 2011. Afghanistan. It's an honor. Sir. Richard watched this, confusion and anger warring on his face. Can we please just deal with this? I have rights. Williams lowered his salute, but his eyes remained on Marcus for a long moment before he turned to Richard. Mr. Caldwell, you assaulted a Medal of Honor recipient. I barely touched him. It was nothing, and I didn't know about any medal. Rodriguez pulled out her handcuffs. Sir, you're being removed from this aircraft for assault on a commercial airliner, a federal offense. You'll be detained for questioning. Richard's lawyer was screaming through the phone speaker now. Richard, stop talking. Don't say another word. Invoke your right to remain silent. But Richard couldn't stop. Panic made him stupid. I have rights. I'm a taxpayer. I contribute to society. I employ people. I donate to charity. Jerome's voice cut through, quiet but hard. So did he. He contributed blood. Agent Rodriguez read Richard his rights, while Williams secured his belongings. Richard kept talking, his voice rising to a near shout. This is because I'm white, isn't it? This is discrimination. Reverse discrimination. I'm being punished for asking questions, for having standards, for expecting quality. Williams stopped, turned to face Richard directly. Sir, you assaulted a 70-year-old man on a commercial aircraft. You verbally harassed him based on his race. You disrupted the flight and threatened crew members. That's federal jurisdiction. You're looking at up to 10 years in prison. Richard's face went from red to white in an instant. 10 years? For touching someone? That's insane. Rodriguez snapped the handcuffs on. For assault on a commercial aircraft. For creating a disturbance. For refusing to comply with crew instructions. Take your pick. As the agents prepared to escort Richard from the plane, he turned back to Marcus one last time. His voice had lost its bluster, replaced by something almost pleading. I'm not a bad person. I'm not evil. I didn't mean for this to happen. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Not with anger, not with triumph. With something sadder, something that looked almost like pity. I don't think you're evil, Marcus said quietly. I think you've lived your whole life in a world that confirmed what you believed. A world that told you that people who look like you deserve more, simply by virtue of looking like you. You've never had to question those assumptions because they benefited you. But those assumptions hurt people. They hurt me. They hurt millions, like me. Richard opened his mouth, closed it. No words came. What I want, Marcus continued, isn't an apology. At least, not just an apology. I want you to think, really think, about why you assumed I didn't belong, about what that assumption was based on, about where it came from and who it serves. The agents led Richard away. As he disappeared through the door, several passengers began to applaud. But Marcus didn't join them. He sat quietly, the metal box still open on his lap, looking troubled rather than vindicated. Captain Morrison noticed. Sir, are you all right? Marcus closed the metal box carefully, returned it to his bag. Captain, could we speak privately for a moment? Morrison led him to the galley area, pulling the curtain for privacy. Her expression was concerned. Sir, what's wrong? Marcus was quiet for a moment, choosing his words. Captain, I appreciate what you did. What everyone did. The support means more than you know. But I need you to understand something. Sir, Marcus' voice dropped, heavy with a pain that went deeper than any bullet wound. I've been refused service at restaurants wearing my dress uniform. I've been followed in stores while holding my grandson's hand. I've been pulled over by police 47 times in my life. Not once was I speeding. Not once was I doing anything wrong. 3 times, officers drew their weapons on me during routine traffic stops. Twice, I had guns pointed at my head while I was reaching for my registration with shaking hands. Morrison's face went pale. Captain, I won the Medal of Honor in 1971. In 1973, I was beaten by police officers in Montgomery, Alabama. They said I fit a description. I was in my dress uniform, walking home from the VA hospital. The medal was in my pocket. It didn't matter. Tears began to stream down Morrison's face. Marcus' voice cracked. In 1985, my son Daniel was killed by police. He was 16 years old. They said he matched a description. He was holding a toy gun, playing with his friends. It was bright orange plastic. They shot him 6 times. 6 times. Morrison put her hand over her mouth, a sob escaping. He wanted to be a doctor, Marcus continued, tears now running freely down his own face. He was smart, kind, funny. He volunteered at the children's hospital. He tutored younger kids. He had his whole life ahead of him. And he's buried in Arlington National Cemetery, in a plot next to where he'll be buried, because of my service. But he never got to serve, never got to live, never got to become who he was meant to be. Sir, Morrison whispered, I don't have words. I'm so sorry. Marcus wiped his eyes. This medal opened doors. It gave me respect in certain spaces. But it shouldn't have been necessary. And it didn't protect my son. It doesn't protect black men and women every single day who don't have medals, who served their country quietly, or who never served at all but are still American citizens who deserve dignity. They all deserve respect, not because of what they've done, but because of who they are, human beings. Morrison stood there, tears streaming, unable to speak. Marcus looked at her with weary, ancient pain. So yes, I'm glad Richard will face consequences. But one man losing his job doesn't fix the system that taught him those assumptions. It doesn't bring back my son. It doesn't undo the thousands of times I've had to prove I belong somewhere. And tomorrow, there will be another Richard, and another, until we address the root of this poison. Flight 447 finally pushed back from the gate, 90 minutes late. The aircraft climbed into the cloudless California sky, banking east toward Chicago. Marcus returned to seat 2A. The other passengers gave him physical space, but their eyes kept finding him. Some with respect, some with curiosity, many with shame that wouldn't quite fade. Brett's phone buzzed continuously. The video had gone supernova. 3 million views. 5 million. 10 million. It was trending #1 on every social media platform. News anchors on CNN, BBC, MSNBC, Fox News, Al Jazeera, all discussing the incident. Hashtag Captain Wellington was trending worldwide. Hashtag Medal of Honor. Hashtag Flight 447. The incident had become a cultural lightning rod. Jessica brought Marcus a bottle of water, her hands still shaking. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I should have done more immediately. I should have removed him the second he said those things." Marcus took the water, his expression gentle. "You were in a difficult position. You handled it as well as you could. Airlines put tremendous pressure on crew members not to escalate situations. You did what you were trained to do. But I was afraid," Jessica admitted, tears forming. "Afraid of being called aggressive. Afraid of losing my job. Afraid of being blamed if things went wrong. So I hesitated. And you suffered for it. Fear is real," Marcus said. "But we have to act despite it. You did act. Eventually. That matters." Henderson approached, his weathered hands worrying the brim of his cap. "Sir, may I speak with you?" Marcus nodded. Henderson sat in the empty seat 2C, the one Richard had vacated. "I'm 74 years old. Korea, 1952. I spent my whole life thinking I was one of the good ones, because I served my country, because I never used racial slurs, because I considered myself tolerant." The word came out bitter, but I sat silent today until it was safe to speak, until everyone else had already stood up. That makes me complicit. That makes me part of the problem. The fact that you recognize that matters," Marcus said. "Does it?" Henderson's voice cracked. "Recognition without prior action? What good is realizing you were wrong after the damage is done?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "It's a start." Marcus was quiet. "What you do next is what counts. Whether you speak up the next time, before it's safe, before it's popular, whether you examine the other places in your life where you've stayed silent." Henderson nodded, tears in his eyes. "I will. I promise you, I will." Patricia, the businesswoman, approached next. "Sir, I run a foundation dedicated to educational equity and youth empowerment. Would you consider speaking to our students? They need to hear your story. They need to understand what you've experienced." Marcus hesitated. "Mom, I'm not a speaker. I don't do well with crowds. You don't have to give a speech. Just talk to them the way you talk to us. About dignity. About assumptions. About what it means to serve your country and still face discrimination. Our kids need to hear that from someone who lived it." Marcus looked uncertain, but nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." Jerome and Lakeisha approached, Mia between them, holding a piece of paper. The little girl had spent the last 30 minutes with crayons borrowed from the flight attendants. She handed Marcus a drawing. In bright crayon colors, she had drawn a figure, a man with a medal on his chest. Around him were other people, all holding hands, in every color her crayon box offered. Above them, in careful block letters, shed-written hero. Marcus' eyes filled with tears as he took the drawing. "Thank you, sweetheart. This is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me." Mia beamed. "My daddy says you're brave. I want to be brave too." Marcus knelt down, bringing himself to her eye level. His voice was gentle but serious. "You can be brave by being kind. By standing up when you see something wrong. Even when it's hard. Even when other people are silent. Even when you're scared. That's the bravest thing there is." On the cabin screens, the news coverage continued. Richard Caldwell's company had issued a statement within 2 hours. "Mr. Caldwell's views and actions do not represent our organization or our values. He has been terminated effective immediately. We apologize unreservedly to Captain Wellington and to the entire black community for the pain caused by this incident." Richard's face was plastered across every news outlet. "Racist executive loses everything after attacking war hero." His LinkedIn profile had been deleted, his Twitter account suspended. His entire life was unraveling in real time for the world to watch. But as Marcus watched the coverage on his phone, he looked troubled rather than satisfied. Brett noticed. "Sir, is something wrong? Has getting what he deserves?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Is he? He lost his job, his reputation, but has he learned anything? Or is he just a cautionary tale for other people to be more subtle with their prejudice? More careful about who's watching?" Brett paused, genuinely considering the question for the first time. Marcus continued. "Performative outrage doesn't fix systemic problems. His company fired him to protect their image, their brand, their bottom line. Not because they've done deep work examining their own hiring practices, their own biases, their own role in maintaining systems of inequality. They fired him so they could say they took action. But what action are they taking on all the Richards who work for them who are just smart enough not to get caught on camera?" Brett lowered his phone slowly, the question hanging between them. Captain Morrison's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Please return to your seats and prepare for landing." Marcus looked out the window at the city lights below. Chicago, where his daughter lived, where his son was buried. The memories came unbidden. 1971. Marcus in a hospital bed in Germany, wrapped in bandages, burns covering his chest and arms, 7 bullet wounds slowly healing. An officer coming in to tell him he was being awarded the Medal of Honor. His mother flying over, crying with pride and relief that he was alive. His father, a Tuskegee airman, saluting him with tears streaming down his weathered face. Marcus remembered thinking, lying in that hospital bed at 24 years old, maybe this will change things. Maybe my sacrifice will help my son grow up in a better world. Maybe he won't face what I faced. Maybe this medal means something. Cut to 1985. Marcus in a black suit, standing in Arlington National Cemetery. Daniel's casket, draped in an American flag because of Marcus' service. 16 years old, 6 bullet wounds, a toy gun. The Medal of Honor in Marcus' pocket, a useless weight, unable to bring his boy back, unable to protect him, unable to change the minds of the officers who saw a black teenager and assumed threat instead of child. Back in the present, Marcus touched the medal through his jacket pocket. Not with pride, with grief for what it couldn't prevent. Grief for every promise it failed to keep. The plane touched down at O'Hare International Airport, tires squealing on the runway. Passengers reached for their bags, ready to deplane and scatter to their separate lives, carrying this story with them. But Captain Morrison's voice stopped them. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We have a special deplaning procedure today." Confused murmurs rippled through the cabin. Morrison continued, "Captain Wellington, would you please come to the front of the aircraft?" Marcus felt his stomach drop. More attention. More ceremony. He just wanted to visit his daughter, see his granddaughter, visit his son's memorial. He didn't want this. But the entire cabin was watching, waiting. He stood, walked forward. The cabin door opened. Marcus stopped, completely still, unable to process what he was seeing. Outside, on the jet bridge, stood a full military honor guard, representatives from every branch: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, each in dress uniform. A color guard held the American flag. Beyond them, through the jet bridge windows, Marcus could see airport fire trucks forming a water arch over the terminal. Hundreds of people crowded the gate area. Veterans in uniforms and leather jackets, covered in patches. Families, airport workers, people holding signs. Welcome home, Captain Wellington. Thank you for your service. Never forgotten. Marcus' knees nearly buckled. This was too much. This was overwhelming. This was everything Head never asked for and didn't know how to accept. Captain Morrison stood beside him, her voice soft. "Sir," the airline called ahead. The veterans organizations in Chicago heard what happened. They wanted to show you what you mean to them, what you mean to all of us. "This is too much," Marcus whispered. "Sir, with respect, it's not enough. It will never be enough." Marcus walked down the jet bridge, his military bearing taking over despite his shock. Shoulders back, head high, feet moving in the unconscious rhythm of a soldier who'd marched 10,000 miles. The honor guard snapped to attention. Each member saluted with parade ground precision. At the bottom of the jet bridge stood General Patricia Hayes, a black woman in army dress uniform with 3 stars on her shoulders. She rendered a perfect salute. "Captain Wellington, on behalf of a grateful nation and the United States Army, welcome home, sir." Marcus returned the salute, his hand shaking. "Mom, I don't deserve this." "Yes, sir, you do." General Hayes stepped forward, dropping her salute. "For Vietnam. For the 23 lives you saved. For the dignity you showed today on that aircraft. For every time you were disrespected and remained gracious. For every insult you absorbed with quiet strength. And for your son, Daniel." Marcus startled. "You know about Daniel?" Hayes' eyes filled with tears. "Yes, sir. My younger brother was killed by police in 1989. He was 18. I wear this uniform for him. For you. For all of us who serve a country that doesn't always serve us back." They embraced. 2 warriors, 2 mourners, 2 people carrying wounds that never quite healed. Passengers deplaned around them, witnessing this moment. Many were crying. The Hendersons held hands, tears streaming. Patricia recorded it on her phone, but respectfully, at a distance. Brett's camera captured it all, the video already approaching 40 million views. News helicopters circled overhead. But Marcus wasn't focused on any of that. A technician handed him a microphone. The crowd quieted. Marcus looked out at the sea of faces. Veterans, families, children, people of every color, every background, all looking at him with respect and expectation. He took a shaky breath. "Thank you for this honor. Truly, it means more than I can express. But I want to be clear about something." The crowd leaned in. "I don't want today to be just about one man on one flight. This happens every day to people without medals, without cameras, without anyone watching or caring. Black men and women, Latino families, Asian Americans, Muslim Americans, LGBTQ Americans, disabled Americans, everyone who's ever been told they don't belong somewhere. They face this every single day." His voice strengthened. "My medal didn't protect my son. It didn't protect thousands of others. So if you're moved by what happened today, don't just be angry at one man named Richard Caldwell. Examine your own assumptions, your own silences. Your own complicity in systems that devalue certain lives. The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. Speak up in moments when it's uncomfortable, before it's safe, before it's popular. Teach your children that every human being deserves dignity, regardless of credentials or accomplishments, or how much money they have, or what uniform they wore. Marcus looked directly at the cameras. To the Richard Caldwells of the world, you're not uniquely evil. You're a product of a society that taught you some people matter more than others, but you can unlearn it. You have to choose to. And to everyone else, everyone watching this, if you stayed silent when you saw injustice, you can choose differently next time. You must choose differently. General Hayes stepped forward. Sir, we have cars ready to take you wherever you need to go. Marcus smiled slightly. Actually, Mom, I was just planning to take the train. That's what I always do. Hayes looked surprised. Sir, you don't have to take public transportation. I know, ma'am. But I'm just a man trying to visit my daughter. That's all I ever wanted to be treated as. Just a man. But Jerome stepped forward from the crowd. Sir, would you let my family drive you? Please. It would be an honor. Marcus saw the sincerity in Jerome's eyes. He saw Lakeisha and Mia standing behind him, the little girl still clutching her crayon drawing. He nodded. I'd like that. Very much. They walked through the terminal together. People applauded, saluted, cried. Some reached out to touch his shoulder, to shake his hand. Marcus accepted it with quiet grace. But he kept moving, kept walking towards something more important than ceremony. Jerome's car. Late afternoon Chicago traffic. Marcus in the passenger seat, watching the city head, known for 40 years, slide past the windows. Mia in the back seat, already asleep, her drawing clutched in her small hands. Jerome glanced over. Sir, where are we headed? Marcus gave him an address. Jerome's GPS loaded it. His face changed as he recognized the location. Arlington National Cemetery's Chicago Memorial Section. The Wall of Names. Sir, I'll wait for you. Marcus shook his head. No. Come with me. I'd like you to meet him. They parked, walked through the memorial garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and gold. Mia had woken up, sensing the solemnity of the place. She held her mother's hand quietly. Marcus stopped in front of a name etched in black granite. Daniel Marcus Wellington, 1968 to 1985. Beloved son, brother, friend. Marcus touched the engraved letters. Daniel, these are good people. Jerome, Lakeisha, and Mia. The kind of people you would have loved to know. The kind of people who give me hope that the world's changing. Slowly. But it's changing. Mia stepped forward, placed her crayon drawing at the base of the memorial. Marcus looked down at it. Shed added something since showing it to him on the plane. Around the hero with the medal, Shed drawn more people. All colors, all ages, all holding hands. And Shed added new words in careful letters. Everyone is a hero when they are kind. Marcus knelt down, tears streaming freely now. He picked up the drawing, held it carefully. Yes, sweetheart, he whispered. That's exactly right. That's exactly what your Uncle Daniel would have said. The four of them stood there as the sun set. 3 generations, connected by service, by loss, by hope. The news coverage continued for days. Richard Caldwell entered court-mandated diversity training, confronting for the first time in his 52 years the assumptions Head built his worldview on. Jessica Ramirez was promoted and began developing comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all flight crews. Brett's video became required viewing in thousands of schools. Captain Morrison started volunteering with veterans organizations. The Hendersons joined community reconciliation groups, doing the hard work of examining their own biases. But the impact that mattered most happened in small moments. A teacher showing the video to students and asking them what assumptions they made about people based on appearance. A parent stopping their child from making a snap judgment about a stranger. A person speaking up when they heard a racist comment instead of staying silent. A nation beginning, slowly, painfully, to examine the poison in its roots. Statistics appeared on screens across the country. Medal of Honor recipients: 3,507 total in American history. Only 89 black recipients. Only 71 living recipients of any race remain. Marcus' voice played over images of him, Jerome, Lakeisha, and Mia, walking back to the car, silhouetted against the Chicago skyline. Heroism isn't just on the battlefield. It's in standing up when it costs you something. It's in changing when you realize you've been wrong. It's in raising children who see human beings, not categories. It's in questioning the comfortable assumptions that make your life easier but other lives harder. That's the fight that matters now. That's the war we all need to fight. The final image froze. 4 people walking together. Different ages, different backgrounds. United by something more important than any difference. United by human dignity. Text appeared on the screen. This story is dedicated to the 89 Black Medal of Honor recipients who served their country with extraordinary valor, and to every Black American who served with honor, yet returned home to fight for the dignity they'd already earned. So, what do you think? Should dignity require credentials? Should Marcus have needed to show his Medal of Honor to receive basic respect? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. And if this story moved you, if it made you think, if it challenged you to examine your own assumptions, and speak up when you see injustice, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel, because we need to keep telling these stories, keep having these conversations, keep pushing ourselves and our society to be better. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, with someone who's faced discrimination, with someone who's stayed silent when they shouldn't have, with someone who's ready to change. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being willing to do the hard work of making this country live up to the ideals it claims to hold. Marcus Wellington fought for this nation with 7 bullets in his body. The least we can do is fight for the kind of nation that treats every Marcus Wellington with the dignity they deserve, medal or not. Until next time, stand up, speak out, and remember that every person you meet is carrying a story you can't see. Treat them accordingly. God bless. Marcus Wellington's story teaches us that human dignity should never require proof of worthiness. His Medal of Honor revealed extraordinary heroism, but the respect Richard Caldwell withheld shouldn't have depended on military credentials. Every person deserves basic human decency simply by virtue of being human. This story exposes how casual racism operates through assumptions about who belongs in certain spaces. Richard didn't question his own presence in first class, despite offering nothing but money. Yet he immediately challenged Marcus' right to occupy the same seat based solely on skin color. This reflects systemic bias, where certain people must constantly justify their existence in spaces others access without question. The complicity of silent passengers matters as much as Richard's active racism. Evil flourishes when good people stay quiet. The Hendersons, Patricia, and others, who eventually stood up initially, chose comfort over courage. Their silence gave Richard permission to continue. True allyship requires speaking up, before it's safe, before it's popular, before someone shows you their Medal of Honor. Marcus' greatest pain came not from Richard's hatred but from a system that couldn't protect his son Daniel despite Marcus' sacrifice. Medals and uniforms didn't shield Daniel from assumptions that cost his life. This reveals the deep structural nature of racism that individual acts of heroism cannot overcome. Real change requires examining our assumptions, challenging our comfort, and teaching the next generation that human worth is inherent, not earned. What assumptions do you make about people before knowing their story? Have you ever stayed silent when you should have spoken up? Comment below and share your honest reflections. If this story challenged you to examine your own biases and commit to speaking up against injustice, smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories that matter, stories that push us to be better, stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Share this video with your family, your friends, your co-workers, especially those who need to understand what racism looks like in everyday moments. Share it with young people who are still forming their view of the world. Share it with anyone who's ever been made to feel they don't belong. Thank you for taking this journey with Captain Marcus Wellington. Thank you for being willing to confront uncomfortable truths. May you carry his wisdom with you, that every person you meet deserves dignity, respect, and the assumption of their inherent worth. May you find the courage to stand up before it's convenient. May you raise children who see humans, not categories. And may you never forget that heroism isn't just on battlefields. It's in choosing kindness when hatred is easier. It's in speaking truth when silence is safer. God bless you all.